Right, so what I want to talk about is the electrical universe and gravity, because we've had 100 years in which we've looked at and understood gravity and the universe in terms of through a model that was produced by Newton and Einstein, which basically defines gravity, or looks at gravity, the force of gravity, through the filter of mathematics. And I mean, mathematics can measure things which are important, and it can measure things that are unimportant. And gravity is obviously important. Its measure is not a substitute for the physics or the reality, the mechanics, the things that make it function. And what's really crazy is when you look at the fact that electrical forces, which we can see with magnets, we can put them together and we can see that they pull. Electrical forces and magnetic forces, which is really one and the same thing, because we know that electrons flowing in electron flow causes a magnetic field, and a magnetic field, when it moves with respect to copper, it can cause current to flow in the copper, and which produces its own magnetic field, which ends up very interesting to be of opposite polarity to the inducing field, which is why when you take a magnet and drop it onto a copper plate, it does something very weird. You'd think it would just fall to the plate, because copper is not magnetic, but as it gets closer, the force of the induced current in the copper with speed, it becomes the current becomes higher, and the reverse magnetic field becomes higher, and you end up this magnet hits the copper, but immediately slows down and sort of descends the last a couple of inches or millimeters, depending on the strength of the magnet, very slowly, which is something we can come back to later. But the point is that we know that apparently the force of electromagnetism is orders of magnitude of 1 times 10 to the 39, 1 with 39 noughts after times more powerful than what we've, under the present model, decided gravity force is. And if you think about it, it's really quite crazy, because what we've decided is that here we've got a force which we can contain, we measure, we can see it, magnetic fields, we can play with them, and we can see this happening. And this magnetic field is not some miraculous thing, but it's the only example we've got of forces that are in the universe as the only force that we know. Yet somehow, when it comes to gravity, we've just created a completely fictitious force. We called it gravity, which really is non-existent. And so we've sort of come to the conclusion that gravity is a myth, and the Earth, in fact, has flux, which is more or less what Tesla was saying. He discovered that there was a potential change as you moved away from the Earth. All sorts of rules that affect it, but in essence, the higher you go, the more negatively charged you become. So if you could create some point that was very positively charged, it's going to want to oppose gravity, as indeed it seems to do, especially in the Searle effect generator, which we are still busy trying to unravel. But in actual fact, we're sort of crazy to even have thought that there was any new force which we've invented, simply because we've arbitrarily decided it's different from the only force that we know, that just happens to be, 10 times 1 times 10 to the 39 times bigger. Why would we even imagine that there was something else, rather than find out what is actually causing this to happen. And it seems very clear that this is exactly what it is. And in the process of giving us this distorted mathematical picture of reality, we've effectively hidden a whole host of different technologies, which would be enormously important for mankind at this time. And I think that this can't be hidden much longer, and we can expect that someone's going to get this right, and we're going to be able to start manufacturing these machines, and we're going to be able to start getting ourselves off the grid, the entire planet off the grid. Obviously, this is a major threat to an enormously widespread and powerful established order with oil, electricity, petroleum, and even wind and solar, and of course especially nuclear. There's just no need for any of these things if you've got a machine that can extract energy from the ether. Tremendous flux in the ether. It's quite obvious that we've missed out on something very fundamental, because we've successfully said, okay, there's no such thing as a greater than unity machine, which has got more energy coming out than is going in. And of course this rule isn't being challenged by this. In actual fact, what we're doing is we're saying we're actually harvesting from the random energy of the ether. We're harvesting electrons and giving them coherence. And of course the secret is the fourth form of matter, not the solid, liquid or gas, but the plasma form of matter, which seems to be multi-dimensional. As always, it's a whole unattended new area of physics, which we see being pointed to with every new revelation, with every new discovery. We see all these features on Mars, which look remarkably like the sort of features you get when you're welding, or when you have arcs onto cathodes or anodes producing physical features. And we have comet Shoemaker-Levy hitting Jupiter, and everyone being astonished. Oh my goodness, what's that flash all about? And we have missions to Jupiter, which find that the predicted electron and ion activity is not even a fraction of what it was anticipated to be. And yet somehow we don't stop to consider, well, maybe our model is wrong. This is why our predictions are so wrong. So it seems to me like there's a case of almost cognitive dissonance on the part of mainstream science. They just cannot swallow the possibility that they could have been so wrong. But I compare it to the mentality of science and mainstream thinking in the time of the Wright brothers, when for weeks the Wright brothers were flying around Kitty Hawk, and the main media was still saying, well, you know, everybody knows that heavier than air flight is not possible. So, interesting to watch this space, see what happens.